Good evening, Johnson County. Welcome to this week's episode of The Breakdown. I'm your host, Greg Cooper, and here on The Breakdown, we deep dive local politics, mainly school boards and city councils, but any and all Johnson County politics are on the table. We air Thursdays at 5 p.m. You can visit the JoCo Community Radio Facebook page to watch shows live or see replays. Also, you can go to www.jococommunityradio.com, where Apple and Android apps are available. Tune in to get the ins and outs of Johnson County, Texas. Tonight, we will be allowing the candidates from the city of Godley to speak to you, the voters, regarding their qualifications and desire to lead Godley. The city of Godley will vote and elect a new council member and a new mayor on November 7th. Godley has been in turmoil for about a year, basically circling the drain from events that began with the abrupt resignation of the former police chief. These four individuals have seen the need, they are answering the call, and they want to help right the ship. They all deserve immeasurable credit for wanting to better Godley and taking action. Time is short. Without further ado, let's get right to it. Running to fill the vacated seat of mayor is Mrs. Stephanie Hodges and Mr. Chris Linker. First off, Mrs. Hodges, I want to thank you. This is tough. I'm critical of Godley, and you have shown immeasurable courage in coming on this show, and I sincerely appreciate it, and it should be noted that this is a big step, and I appreciate you trusting us in this. Mr. Linker, thank you for your service to our country. We appreciate that and your willingness to step back into the arena and help locally. So without further ado, we're going to run down a few questions here, and this is their time to speak to you, the voters. We're going to start with Mr. Linker. He's agreed to go first on these questions. Chris, why are you running for the mayor of the city of Godley?
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us. Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
After moving to Godley and seeing the animosity between the old Godley residents and the new Godley residents, between the residents and the city government, and then when the open positions came up for the government, I decided that my skills that I was given as a leader, developed by the Army, would fit to help Godley move on into the future and see what I could do to help on that.
Great. And you've been out campaigning. How's that been going so far?
It's going good so far. People are talking about the problems they see within Godley, and we're discussing things and where I think we'll go on that. And I'll hit some of them topics later.
Mrs. Hodges, you have you've been a Godley resident for many years.
Many, yes.
Many. What made you take the step to jump into the arena?
Well, as most of you know, I retired in January from the city of Godley after 20 plus years of service, and went through a little stage of anger, mad, sad, relief, and now I'm ready to help get my city back to the way it was.
So, how has your reception been going so far?
Great.
Since you've decided to run? You're happy with it?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Very good. Very good. So the state of Godley's gone through a lot of changes, massive growth. Chris, your assessment of the city of Godley, what would you consider the assessment and et cetera?
Well, I currently think the city is in a crisis. I think we have so many, as I said, so much animosity between the different groups that it's just causing strife that we need to get past. I think we also have problems with our budget and our taxes. I know the city council is working with what they have to work with, and they're doing the best they can. But I think that the approved budget is higher than what we needed. That caused the tax rate to be raised. I also think we need to start working on our infrastructure. We are definitely lagging behind the growth that we need to maintain with all the growth of the new subdivisions.
And is that what you're hearing from most of the people you're interacting with as you're talking to them? Is that, or is that how you feel? How did you come to some of these assessments?
The majority of it is how I feel. And as I was out talking to people, the two big topics they are hitting is the taxes and road condition for specifically within the infrastructure.
Within the infrastructure. Mrs. Hodges, your assessment of the city of Godley, and you have a much larger view of that due to living there for so long. What is your assessment of the state of Godley?
I agree with Mr. Linker on some things. Tax rate, I don't have an issue with because the tax rate hasn't been raised in the city of Godley in many years. And it was time to take a tax rate hike. In order to get those roads repairs and get that infrastructure fixed, you're going to have to raise property taxes. What people need to understand is their valuation from CAD is a lot of what affects their tax rate.
So other than taxes and infrastructure, is there any other assessments of the city that you need? There's a lot of new neighborhoods going in. There's a lot of new communities going in. MUDs are a big issue. Any of those things kind of any of those things concerns, or do you guys have plans for those? And we're going to get into top issues and goals. So Mr. Linker, what are your top issues and what are your goals in working through and navigating some of the problems with the city of Godley?
Well, for me, the top issues, I'm going to go back to the budget and the taxes. They approved a budget that was $300,000 in the red on day one. And like I said, with the information they received, I understand that there is some errors in figuring it out. But when you look at the actuals that they've received for fiscal year 23 for the revenues, they made almost $300,000 more than what they're projecting to spend for fiscal year 24. So once those numbers are looked at, I'm not so sure that we needed to raise the taxes 13%. I think, we're going to have a budget windfall this year. And I think on that line, it'll be a way to help our first responders and our city employees with their wages and benefit package to help start retaining them instead of hiring them, training them, and letting other cities hire them away from us.
So to touch on the budget that you brought up, they're running running a deficit budget. What you're saying? So for the voters, they're purposefully over budgeting. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
Their budget, they proposed to spend $300,000 more than what the revenues they're going to bring in between sales tax, property tax, all the possible revenues. Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Hodges, and so we might come back to that. We'll let Ms. Hodges answer about her top issues and your goals are, so those issues, what about your goal before we move on to Mrs. Hodges?
Well, my goal there, like I said, would be to go in and be able to relook at the budget to see where I really believe there are some errors. I believe they undervalued our sales tax revenue and some other areas. And then with the property tax, it should create a windfall, and that will help us to retain people, to be able to use it more on the infrastructure. On the roads, the 22 audit showed that we had $400,000 could only be used for road maintenance. I'd like to see where that could best serve Godley and best improve the roads that need it the most first.
Okay, Mrs. Hodges, your top issues with the city of Godley, and then we'll move on to your goals right after that.
I'm with Chris on the budget issues. They did undervalue sales tax greatly. I've seen those numbers in the past. I know what they are. I do believe that we need to get our employees better benefits, better retirement. One of my other concerns would be water for the old town Godley. What we know is the old town Godley. The city is currently on well water, and how long is that going to last, that city?
So just to help clarify that, because a lot of people are new to Godley, small town, big growing town on well water, and there's no current plan to increase water. Is that correct? Is that what you're going
Correct.
with that?
Not for the old, what was known as the old city part. Now the outer parts, the subdivisions, they're on Johnson County side. So.
Okay. So both of you, I'm gonna follow up with a question here because both of you talked about that you feel there's additional sales tax that will be had, and that and that there's some problems with the budget. And you would put that money back into the employment for benefits and retirement and stuff like that. Is that what you would do? And roads, I believe you said, is that what you foresee with that?
Yes, with the the extra money coming in from the sales tax revenue, with the what I see as being a raising the taxes, which will create extra money, that should be one of the first areas that's looked at, is how to retain all our city employees, the first responders, the public works personnel, just like I said, so we're not training them for another city or another police department to hire them away from us.
I agree.
You
I
agree? And I agree with a lot of what you're saying too. I would love to see, the turnover is dramatic. They've taken a step. They pay some firefighters now. I would love to see them add a paramedic to the fire department to offset some of AMR's responsibilities, especially when they're out of the area. And I would love to see the police department institute a mandatory polygraph, which is at the discretion of the city, to potentially tighten up some of that stuff. But there's definite turnover, and it would be nice to get some continuity moving forward. So I agree with both of what you're saying with that. So other than getting in there, and this is a tough question. This is a tough question. You see a lot more behind the scenes than you do from the outside moving in. But what is your plan to get there? So you guys have talked about looking at the budget, and you think that there's going to be some more money coming in. And so how do you enact some of these goals that you guys have to begin to right this ship? And I mean, one of the biggest things is staffing is huge. And so they had been unable to staff positions for an extended period of time. I think the last permanent staff left December or January. I'm not sure, but we're coming on 9 months now without permanent staffing. Have you guys thought about how to attract talent to these positions to help with some of these very valid concerns and goals and solutions that you guys have? Chris?
Caught me off guard on that one. I think it all is gonna wind back in. I mean, I've heard that there's people that will not work for the city because of our city's anger issues, is how I was worded to me, that even headhunters or temp agencies don't want to send us anybody. We got to get past this, but we got to go through the applications and see why so many were listed as not qualified for all the positions. And
I understand that's tough. You're on one side of that line, and there's no visibility on that. But the attracting of talent pools, that this is a hurdle that needs to go over. Mrs. Hodges, what are your thoughts on that? You have some experience with with attracting in that environment. How would you solve that problem? Because you can't have for everybody listening, these two are volunteering time to go in unpaid positions to make their communities better. They're not, their role is not full-time employees. So that problem needs to get negotiated too. How would you guys, or what are your thoughts on how to work through
it's
that?
my understanding they're in negotiations for a contract for a city administrator. That needs to happen. There's no reason why that shouldn't have already happened. I know people that have applied for that position that were well qualified, but never even received a phone call, an interview, or anything. And then once that's in place, I think that city administrator needs to put her city secretary. I believe they hired an administrative assistant Tuesday night, or we're going to offer a job. And then as a mayor, you need to go in and you need to learn to work with those people.
One of the things that confuses me looking at this, they hired an administrative assistant with no administrator. It would be really nice to have the overseer in place and allow that individual to bring people that can work best with him. So I wish they could have done that differently. One of the concerns I have with some of their stuff is their requirements are extremely restrictive. in so much as they're requiring very specific criteria that there's no way to work around that. If you have a very, very, very qualified person but can't check that box, they may need to loosen that up. I don't know, but something's going on with the delays in getting qualified people there. So do you have a unique skill? You have a Mr. Linker, you have a very, very storied history of doing a lot of different service for your nation. What unique skills did you learn from your past, your military service, etc., that would guide you and lead you? And what would you lean on? What lessons learned would you lean on to move forward and help Godley pull out of its hole, stable the ship, and then try to move forward and become a lot more productive of a city and a much more desirable city?
Well, my past, I spent 25 years in the Army and 2 years with Department of State. Out of that time, I spent 25 years as a bomb disposal tech, going downrange, taking apart the IEDs, the homemade bombs, or military munitions. I've worked with chemical and nuclear weapons. So as far as making the tough decisions and the life and death decisions, I've been doing it for years. Most of my job has been through crisis and crisis management for that type of stuff. So I think I bring some assets that will help on that line. And the military has taught, everybody from all the different backgrounds, regardless of your background and your belief, they just got to become a team and be able to work together if we're going to succeed. And I truly believe that.
Mrs. Hodges, I'm only familiar with you running a small business in town, and then you were a former employee of the city of Godley. Other than that, I don't know much of your background. So in the totality of your background, what have you learned? What lessons learned? What do you feel makes you the best candidate for mayor to move the city forward, to stable it first of all, and kind of pull it out of its hole? What do you feel is your best criteria to do this?
Well, I did grow up in Godley. I graduated from Godley, grew up with a father that was the public works director for the city of Godley for many, many years. He retired from that position. Grew up with an uncle that worked for the city of Godley. I knew the original sewer plant. I played down there, ran down there. Just knowledge, experience. I've been on both sides now, so I know how to work with people. I know how to stay positive. I know what teamwork is. And I just think my knowledge and my history of growing up there, I think that makes me the best candidate.
Fair enough. So why should voters, out of everything that we've talked about here, Mr. Linker, and before we start asking a little bit more specific, generalized questions, why do you feel that voters should trust you to lead Godley? You guys are say a lot of the same things. You have two dramatically different backgrounds. What is do you feel is unique about you, and why should voters trust you to lead Godley?
One of the big differences between us is I'm not a lifetime resident of Godley. I moved here a couple years ago, just under 2 years ago. And seeing all this animosity and stuff here, I don't have loyalties to old Godley, new Godley, old city government, or the ones that opposed it. I will represent all of Godley. I think I will choose to do what is right over what will make people happy, and that might be a bad thing right now, but I think that's probably one of the stronger suits coming in here, kind of new to the situation.
Mrs. Hodges, the polar opposites as far as experience. Same question for you. Unique skills, and why should voters trust you to lead Godley?
I've been tagged old Godley, but I never disagreed with new Godley changes, things that they would like to see. I can see both sides of the pictures. I can play both sides of the pictures. I'm not the person that says, no, it's going to be, oh, Godly or nothing. I love some of the ideas that they want to do. I think we are behind in times. Things do need to be updated and looked at. So I think I'm a full supporter of all.
Fair enough. A full supporter and all. So I'm going to ask some very generic questions here that are basic municipal questions that I've seen with some of the council, and see what your guys' thought on it. So one of the things is Godly is not it does not attract a lot of business, and a lot of businesses can help offset some of the property taxes that residents pay. And this is a problem. And so there's been discussion with the current city council about tax incentives for businesses that may want to come to Godly. Some city council members are saying, no, don't do this. They'll come with growth. Other ones are saying we need to attract. Have you thought about any ways to potentially, there's a lot of property for sale. There's a lot of rezoning going on from residential to commercial. Have you thought about any ways to potentially lure some businesses in? Is that a plan of either of yours too? What are your thoughts on the need for that? Here, taxes are going up and all of that stuff. What are your thoughts on the need for that, or any way to facilitate bringing business in to help offset some of that and support the community where people can live and work in the same environment, and not just a bed community?
Well, we have almost by the audit almost $4 million in a economic development fund that is specifically tagged to be used to help bring in new businesses. It can be used from everything from buying land and granting it to a business to come in, bonuses for the number of employees, tax incentives. Part of the problem there is, my understanding is, they still haven't found the bylaws yet for our economic development fund. So not sure 100% as to how it all can be used, but we need to bring in, businesses that'll help, generate the sales tax revenue so that we can offset that 52% of the tax money is coming from the residents. I don't think we need a full-size Walmart. I'm not looking at the big size. We need the smaller businesses, the boutique-sized businesses that'll also help make Godly more desirable for people to even shopping trips and stuff like that.
I used to live in Godly. I moved to Joshua, and very little I could do locally. I really would have been nice to be able to stay a lot more locally. Mrs. Hodges, same question to you. What some of the current council, and as mayor, you'll have to navigate these different personalities in some ways. Some are for tax incentivizing businesses to come in. Some are against it. Businesses will come if it's profitable enough. There's no doubt about that. But what would you like to see as far as in ways to attract businesses like that?
We have done some tax agreements with some businesses that are currently there. I think we're a little bit landlocked as far as city limits to get that sales tax.
Can you? I don't understand when you say landlocked. I think of a country that doesn't have an ocean front. Help me understand that piece, please.
Because our city limits is so small.
Okay.
Our ETJ is large, but a business in our ETJ is not going to help the city. It's going to help with people, but it's not going to help sales tax with the city. I think the railroad tracks hurt us a little bit because of the cost and process to get a railroad crossing, because it's my understanding if you apply to open one, you have to agree to shut one. So
are you talking about like where the bars come down type railroad track
yes.
crossing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So you've talked about some problems on attracting businesses. What anything that you would help to do to attract businesses?
I would go with the 4B funds that are available to try to attract those businesses. The 4B needs to be more active. It hasn't been active in several years. So that is one issue. And then I think the tax incentives are a good use.
Tax incentives.
Mhm.
So let's make sure everybody understands when I hear tax incentives, how I think of that. And I want to make sure that there's no margin for interpretation. You're giving a business a tax break to move their business or start a business in Godly, and then that the benefit to the city is the sales that it creates. The city gets benefit from the sales tax, and that would be like over a period of time, and eventually that would go away. But it makes it easier to start a business, get a business moving, get it profitable, and the city, while not receiving the full benefits of a business being there, it receives sales tax business, and then you have employment too. Is that what you guys mean by are we all on the same page with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there any other type of tax incentives that I may not be aware of or thinking of that can be used? I don't know. This is an off the cuff question here as we wind down here. Is there anything else about that? That's a good incentive. I can see that, but
I can't think of any other tax incentives that the 4B could be used for.
okay. Mrs. Hodges, you too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Guys, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service to our country, Mrs. Hodges. I have a lot of respect for you. I'm not liked and godly. You took that trust. Thank you for trusting me.
You're welcome.
We'll be back after. Welcome back to the breakdown. Here where we're deep diving local politics. Today we're talking Godley City Council and mayoral candidates. They will be on the election here for the November 7th election. Well, before we get back to them and introduce the city council member candidates, we want to remind you that JoCo Community Radio is proud to be the voice of Johnson County, Texas. It's live 24/7 on the TuneIn Radio Network. TuneInJoco.com is the place to find all the ways to listen and watch, and the station app is also available for free on Android and Apple devices. Simply search your store, check out our lineup and more at jococommunityradio.com. This episode and more brought to you by Next Level Claims, making your insurance work for you. Reach out to your Texas sales rep at 844-TEX-HAIL. That's 844-839-4245. And be sure to dress your arms and more with the Tiffy.com. Boy, talking about hail damage, before we introduce our next two, I got a roof and 2 cars to replace. So, anyways, we're here talking about Godley City Council, Godley mayoral candidates. There's an election, and to remind everybody, no matter who you vote for, no matter who you support, no matter who you back, get out and vote. A lot of hard work went into securing our right to vote. Don't take it for granted. Early voting will be Monday, October 23rd through Friday, October 27th from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday, October 30th to Friday, November 3rd, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And on November 7th, the actual election day, it will be from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And you can vote in Cleburne, or you can vote at the Park Pavilion just on voting day. So we've spoken to the mayoral candidates, Mrs. Hodges and Mr. Lanker, and now we're going to talk about the city council candidates. And before we introduce them, we're going to remind everybody how we got here. After the last election in May, the mayor resigned, and shortly thereafter, the newly elected council member, David Odell Williams, resigned, which then forced Godley to have this special election. So here we are, 6 months after the last election, having another one for 2 vacant spots. Running to fill the seat of the council member, the vacated seat, is Miss Amber Barba and Ms. Gabriella Mize. And have you guys sorted out who's going to go first yet and how you want to do that? Does it matter?
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
All right. So I'm going to start with one,
Okay.
and then someone's going to have the second point, and then
Okay.
I'll reverse it going forward.
Okay.
So welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Mhm. And Godley has been in some turmoil that everybody knows about, and anybody that would jump into that mess needs to have the respect of people, and has earned my respect for sure, because it's not definitely a turnkey situation. So props to you guys for even considering, let alone actually throwing your hat in the ring. So we'll start with Ms. Mize.
Mhm.
Why are you running for the City Council of Godley, especially with all that's going on?
Well, I'll tell you, Greg, I thought about running last time and I didn't run. I didn't put myself on the ballot and I didn't put myself out there. And the instant that we had that election and I went and voted, I was kicking myself because I knew that this city is where I'm putting my roots down for the rest of my life. And why would I not take an opportunity to help them get out of a sticky situation that they're in right now? Obviously, we know that the last election was very high energy. It was very high stress with both the ISD and the city. And I was just completely kicking myself that I never did that. Right now, the city is in a great deal of distress. I really thought that after we won the election by having people that we really thought were going to make a difference and make a change on there, I thought things were going to settle down. And if anything, they have gotten worse. And it's not a testament to who's on there right now, because I think that they are doing exactly what they can with what they have. I think that it was just so far gone by the time they got there that they don't know which direction is up and they don't know how to swim and stop themselves from drowning. So I'm hoping that with my abilities and my skills that I can help them get there.
I agree with you. It almost feels like they have gotten very, very, very comfortable with not acting on
Yes.
stuff, and they've become very, very, very comfortable with that. So I agree with that. There's almost like a lack of wisdom that can guide. Ms. Barba,
Mhm.
for you, what has just caused or created this situation that you feel you need to throw your hat in the ring?
I just wanted, oh, sorry. I just wanted to do my civic duty. I'm retired and I'm able to throw my hat in wholeheartedly and my heart as that goes. And again, like Gabrielle said, that the current council, they're in a hole. And hopefully we can get in there, either myself or Gabby, to help them get all the issues corrected and get the city going back to where it needs to be for the citizens and the businesses. Um, it's in a hole. That's all I can say.
It's a deep one. It's a deep one for sure. So now we'll
Okay.
start with you,
Mhm.
Ms. Barba. So you've already touched on this a little bit about your assessment of the state of Godley, but
Mhm.
both of you guys, I've seen at lots of city council meetings. You've been watching it for a while. What is your overall assessment of where Godley was, kind of as the change happened, where it was to where it is now? There's kind of three large sections of
Right.
differences.
Right.
What is your assessment of that, and if that makes sense?
Well, I wasn't really involved with all the beginning of all of the drama. I really believe there was a lot of drama, and with the past mayor and city council, and then I came in the middle, and then we had the election, and then the council decided to leave.
Mr. Williams?
Yes, and I decided to go ahead and get in there and to get the assessment and hopefully bring the city of Godley back to where it should be. As I grew up in a small town, and I grew up in Johnson County. I'm not going to say which town I grew up in. It wasn't in Godley though, but I just know the
So
friendliness.
much for transparency. Right?
Yes,
I'm kidding.
yes. And so far for I'm used to having everybody say hi to each other, and it's not like that in Godly. And I don't know if it's because what they said earlier, the old Godly or the new Godly. We're all people. We need to all come together and be the citizens of Godly.
Fair enough. Ms. Mize, your assessment, three polar opposites. Old Godly, a lot of turmoil, big changeover. When that change happened, the mayor and a council member resigned, lickety split, a lot of staff turnover, and now here we are. What is your assessment of that, and how do you feel about that?
The city is still in a great deal of distress. They are in so much turmoil right now. I'm going to go back to, we don't know which way is up. And we're not listening to each other. And even more so, we're not respecting one another. And there's a lot of people out there with great ideas, and they want to just get in there and help. And
Exactly.
quite frankly, they want to love each other. And we're not anywhere close to being to that point right now. That makes us not attractive to everybody. People moving here, you'll see the posts on Facebook. What's this place like? How much do you like it? And I'm right there with you. I grew up in a very small town. I grew up in Ohio. So, right. And I grew up on the lake in a little town called Vermilion. And then I moved to an even smaller town called Wakeman. In fact, it was called the Village of Wakeman. That's how small it was. I graduated with like 80 people in my class. And I'm right there with you. You went into the store, you knew everybody there. You said hi. How can we help each other? You know, the elderly got their, well, we don't get snow here, but you know, when we got the snow, their driveways were plowed without anybody having to say, can somebody come and help me?
Mm-hmm.
And Godly has that potential, even with how much larger it is than the cities that I grew up in. But we have to get the morale there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not there right now. You can even see a lot of conflict on the council right now. They don't tend to look at each other. They don't appear to be speaking with each other. And a lot of the comments that I hear when they're discussing an issue is more degrading or putting them down instead of looking for the solution that the city needs right now.
Fair enough. I think I agree with both of your guys' assessments. We're going to move on to your top issues and your goals for if elected. So Ms. Mize, keeping in the format we're in, what would you say that your top issues are with Godly, and what are your goals moving forward? And we're going to get to solutions here. So we'll talk more specifically about that after this. But what are your top issues and goals for the city of Godly if you're elected?
My top issues for the city of Godly is very, very high on the list. Very, very much number one is the morale for the citizens, the morale for the employees. We have to get that up in order to be successful as a city. My next issues after that is, of course, the budget. It's a huge topic. It's a big point of contention amongst the council members and amongst the citizens. Obviously, nobody's happy about their taxes right now. With that, also the lack of court. You know, the city is missing out on additional revenues, and it makes our police force look inefficient and ineffective. You know, they're coming to us and they're saying, here's what our report is, and we're writing tickets for 20% of what we're pulling over. And a lot of that is because they know that there's no court. So what is the point in writing the ticket? We have to get back to writing the tickets. Unfortunately, that's how some people are going to learn their lesson and not cause a danger to the city of Godly. My last one, of course, is staffing. I could talk about staffing all day long. I have a master's in management and leadership. I've been in the corporate world for a long time. I'm no longer in the corporate world. I'm an educator now. But I could talk about staffing all day long to anybody who wants to hear it. And again, it all ties back to that morale issue that we have right now.
Well, I have to follow that now.
Well, and I mean, if there's one thing about Godly, and you know, for those listening out there, there's some obvious issues. So most cities are turnkey and they're kind of like plug and play, and they're just cruising along. So a lot of this stuff comes to like good idea fairies,
Right?
And then it's like, well, what good idea sounds better? So I mean, it's okay to have similar goals and issues, because they're glaring and Godly. So, so I mean, seriously,
Right.
that's fine.
Right.
So what are your
My
issues
assessment-
and your goals?
Okay. My goals basically is like she said, is the staffing. And we currently have one lady that's working her, I don't know if I can say this, hiney off, trying to do everything. And she was only hired for one position, but she's running around like a chicken with her head cut off. The second is the police force, or department, whatever you want to call them. I'm used to being able to, in a small town, to wave at your cops and they wave back at you. They don't do that. They just like look at you, sorry, and like, why are you waving at me, kind of thing. They need to get out into the town, into the subdivisions, into the neighborhoods, and get out of their cars and talk to the people and go out and interact with some of the children in the playgrounds and stuff. I just lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
No. Yeah, you're talking about staffing. You were talking
Yes,
about police and a little bit of
right.
friendly of morale of
Yeah,
the town.
exactly. And we need to bring in some more businesses, not just eateries, just other like these minor little breweries and whatnot. It's just bring the town back to life. You know, you go through town in dark and it's already closed up, like there's nothing there. One small town, Buda, for example, they've brought their town back up to life, and it is growing monopolist now, and it's amazing what they've done. I haven't just lived in small towns; I've lived in the Austin area, and it is growing. We don't want Godly that big at all. We don't have the infrastructures for that at all.
I don't know. That little football stadium's rivaling UT's there.
So it's just this. All I can say is the staffing. Get the city hall open and open to the public where people feel comfortable going in there and not like going to a ghost town.
Sure. So we're going to move on to solutions. Some of the mayoral candidates brought up 4B economic funds. That's a $4+ million amount of money that's sitting in Godly that's designed to be used with obviously for growth and development. So I mean, there's some restrictions, but it's pretty open to how that kind of money could be used, and not specifically to that money, but as far as solutions go to solving some of these problems, staffing, I think yeah, you got to attract people, but solutions to solve some of these problems. What would you consider, or how would you solve some of these problems, or what would you lean on to solve some of these?
Well, right now I'm currently on the Mosaic Committee, where we're trying to make a master plan for the city of Godly. So
real quick, for those that don't know, that's a long-term committee that's trying to guide long-term Godly and guide it down a direction. For those that don't know, just so we can. So continue.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. But just so people understand what that is.
What is. So I've learned that we need to be able to only bring certain housing subdivisions in certain areas, large businesses in certain areas. It's just a long-term goal that we need to get going and figure out where we want to put, like if a pharmacy comes in, where are we going to put these pharmacies if they want to come in? Really, there's nowhere to put them right now. Oh my goodness, I don't know.
So do you feel that plan is being productive?
We're getting there.
Yeah,
we're almost finished with it. We're going to have our open house soon to open up to get approval through the city council, and it's getting there. There's still some issues that need to be worked out. So
fair enough. So Ms. Mize, your plan to get there, and what solutions do you bring to the table?
Well, one of the things that we have to consider too is not only how do we bring these businesses to us, but how do we make sure that they stay successful? How do we make sure that in 2 years they're not shuttering their doors because they didn't know what they were doing, or because they didn't have enough business because their prices were too high and they couldn't compete with somebody driving 15 minutes to go to a larger store that had a little bit better pricing. Everybody today is dealing with inflation. So you have to be careful. And again, just do they know what they're doing and how to be successful in order to continue to thrive in this little town? As the town grows, of course, there's more opportunity for them to make more money, but it has to be attractive to them. Let's look at some other notes that I took. I think that obviously with the budget issue, things need to be recoded, even if not for auditors in the future, just so we know what departments are a drain on our budget, and we can then look at the pain points and say, what can we apply for grants for? Where can we get aid with some of this stuff that is such a drain on us because we're not keeping track of maintenance issues and we're not doing the RFPs and things like that? We need to see who's spending the most amount of money and how we can either cut it or how we can get some more help with that. In regards to staffing, I have heard from multiple former employees that there was always this expectation that they all just did everything. Don't rob Peter to pay Paul. Do not take somebody's skill set and try to force them into learning this new skill set that doesn't apply with what their job is supposed to be. If you hire someone to be a court clerk, they're a court clerk.
Exactly.
Let them do their job. Let them outline their responsibility. And that's another reason why we're not attractive to people, because they're like, okay, well, I'm going to sign up for the city secretary job, but I'm also going to do the court. I'm also going to be overseeing the police department. I'm also going to be this, which is not what they are supposed to be doing. And if they don't have a clear outline on what their expectations are, of course they're running scared. And let them see who their leaders are. If you don't allow them to have transparency with the council, who they are serving in our bylaws, they're not going to want to come and serve them. So you have to be transparent. Don't hide behind one person, and don't force them to only go to one person either. If they have a problem, they need to know that there's a clear avenue and that they have recourse. You can't just stick them in a box and say, sorry, you're on your own. So these are all things that I'd like to outline for staffing.
I agree. The staffing issue is one of the most frustrating things from the outside looking in. They have gone back and forth from, should we do an intern? Should we not? Should we do a temp agency? Should we not? Should we look for a permanent person? Should we not? And I'm a big believer in, as you both kind of leaned on, putting the most valuable hands on that specific thing that they're value at. You don't get a lawyer to do secretary job. You don't get a secretary to try to run the courts. And so
Right.
you guys are absolutely right. Kathleen Rice, the current court clerk, the court clerk that quit, they might have been the best court clerk, best secretary in the absolute world. And we would never know because they weren't set up for success. So anybody could determine that. And whose fault is it? Well, we're not trying to assess blame. We're trying to solve problems here, but you got to look at the problems and you got to honestly assess them. So, as we're getting close to winding down here, Ms. Mize, what unique skill, you come from the corporate world, you're an educator, what unique skill and why should voters trust you to guide and lead and work on moving Godley forward?
One of my unique skills is that I always like to continue learning. They say that an educator is a forever student, and I have taken that role very seriously throughout my entire life of pursuing, higher education, learning exactly how things work and not following just what somebody's assessment of how something works. I really dig deep into what the problem is. How can we come up with a solution? And there is a solution to every problem. You cannot give up on every single problem because the solution is not staring you in the face. I can be a little hard-headed. I can definitely vote against what other people want me to vote for based on the information that I have in front of me. I'm a very evidence-driven person. If you come to me with evidence, it doesn't mean that I won't change my mind.
Ms. Barba?
Okay. Well, I managed a couple of pediatric offices in the Austin area before we relocated up to Fort Worth. I'm going to just say one of the pediatricians asked me why he was there because I know everything about his practice. And I told him it's because I can't prescribe and I can't diagnose. So that is why you're here. So with that being said, I do have management skills under my wings, you could say. Again, I am retired and I want to go forward and get the city back to where it needs to be, working directly with the other council members and the mayor pro tem and the upcoming, hopefully, new mayor, and get it work together instead of the bickering that I've seen in the councils. Like she said that they don't look at each other anymore. The current council, when they first started up there, they were looking at each other and laughing and having a good time. But now it's just like deers in a headlight.
They were a team before and they're not anymore.
Right, right.
They all ran on very similar. They all made very clear statements when they ran. They were very clear about what they would do. They started off by doing exactly what they said they would do, which was work on removing the former mayor or encouraging him to step down based on things that had gone along, and that went well. And as soon as that roadblock and that obstacle, it's like nobody had thought beyond that.
Right.
It's like okay, the big elephant or the big gorilla on our back and the elephant in the room now is removed, and no staff, no wisdom on the council, because I don't. And David Odell Williams walking out like he did after a month, I can't even begin to remotely fathom that. But Ms. Mize, Ms. Barbara, we want to thank you for throwing your hat in the ring. You both should be commended and respected, and because you are doing more than most people would do. As we wind down, early voting October 23rd to October 27th, 8th to 5 in Cleburne, October 30th to November 3rd in Cleburne, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And November 7th, you will know who the new mayor of Godley is and the new council member. We'll see you next week on The Breakdown. Good luck.